to say that, okay, just letting you know that this is a recorded presentation, and that gives us the ability to make sure that people who can't join us right now can actually view this later. So I'm just letting you know that this is a recording. Again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Bilkey. I'm a Conservation Science Manager with Audubon Great Lakes, and also on the board of Chicago Ornithological Society. I also want to introduce one of our moderators today, whose name is Kristen. Kristen, say hi. She's going to tell you a little bit about what to know if this is your first Zoom experience, or even if it isn't your first one.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. As Stephanie mentioned, this presentation is being recorded, just so you're aware. All participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar, just a heads up. But if you do have any questions, there will be a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So please use the chat box and send your questions there. And again, please bear with us. You know, we're all functioning in a new reality of virtual content. And if you have any technical difficulties, feel free to send a message in the chat. And, you know, please be advised too that we are keeping an eye on things. So, you know, keep it PG. This is being recorded again. So we appreciate your cooperation and thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. So for everyone who's joining us, I just want to say thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that you and your family are doing well this evening. And I just want to acknowledge, of course, we're living through just such a stressful time. And it's, you know, it keeps reminding me just how grateful I am to be a part of this birding community, a community that just helps us find hope and joy in the natural world around us. And right now, with it being spring, we have so many hopeful things to look forward to. And I hope we all can see a light at the end of the tunnel where, you know, someday we can all do presentations and birding together actually in person. But until then, we hope that you enjoyed this program that we put together. This program is part of a series that we just started through Chicago Ornithological Society and in partnership with partners that you see here today, Chicago Audubon, Peggy Notobart, and our local Feminist Bird Club, who's with us today, part of our presentation. We started the Birds and Bytes programming series so that we can all engage the birding community in the Chicago area and beyond, which I know as long as you find out about this program, you can join us and even learn a little bit about what's happening in the birding scene and here in Chicago. But the thought behind this series was basically to be kind of like a virtual version of Birds and Beers, which is a gathering of birding friends where we all can sit down and learn about what's going on in the birding community. And now we're just taking that fun spirit and transforming it into a virtual experience. So tonight's program, we're going to take a dive into 3 really interesting happenings in the birding community that highlight inclusivity. And so for me, when I think about inclusivity in birding, I just keep thinking, you know, birding is for everybody. And I just feel really compelled to share that with as many people as I know. But it's also important to remember that even though a lot of us, we know in our hearts that birding is for everyone, that's not necessarily true. It doesn't ring true for everyone that learns about birding. And I know I've met tons of people who tell me I'm not really a birder, or I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I feel like there are definitely those barriers that prevent some people from becoming birders or getting into birding. I know we've all kind of experienced that in our own way sometime. But tonight we're going to meet 5 people who are breaking down those barriers, and I can't wait to introduce you to them. So first off, in the spirit of Birds and Beers also, I want to highlight that when we started this series, we started with a featured brewery. So I believe Chris Michalik is here, and he's going to say a word about our featured brewery. Chris, are you there?
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I was on mute. Hi, everybody. Chris Michalek. I'm on the board of Chicago Ornithological Society. And, you know, our organization and as well as, the partner organizations that we're doing this with, we don't do this alone. We don't run our organizations without partners. And part of what I think we need to do here, or at least help out with, is helping our brewery partners get through this crazy time. So as Stephanie said, we're doing each Birds and Bytes will have a featured brewery, and just wanted to give them a shout out. They're usually partner breweries that we've worked with before. And want to return the love. So this is no cost to them, but we just wanted to give a shout out so that everyone can go sample some of their fine beers. This week is Middlebrow Brewery. The Bungalow by Middlebrow is a neighborhood-focused microbrewery that's been a huge help to the Chicago chapter of the Feminist Bird Club. They've been providing a gathering space for their meetings and the like at free of charge, so big help there. Middlebrow, they're a neighborhood-focused, socially conscious fermenter. So they're not just doing beer; they also do bread and pizza. Go check them out. They got some great stuff, some great beers. Tonight, I am drinking the Pith. There we go. I got the Pith and Pith set up. So it's a Kolsch with some citrus in it, and then it also came with a record. Oh, you can't see me because of the mayor. Oh, anyway, so it's a pretty cool collaborative effort that they're offering up. So it's a 4-pack of beer and a record for $25. The record is from Milk Belly. Anyway, they're over at 2840 West Armitage. They're open for curbside pickups Tuesday through Saturday, noon through 6. All transactions are online, so you don't have to touch anybody or anything except your stuff. Go check them out. When you do, just say hey from FBC, COS, CAS, and Notobart.
Thank you, Chris. I want to turn it over for a bit to another guest we have today, Edward Warden, who is the just announced new president of the Chicago Ornithological Society. Edward, can you say a few words about our other partners today?
Acting president.
Oh, acting.
We all got to vote on it at the end of the year still.
Okay, never mind.
I'll keep it short and sweet, which just say thank you all so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to come hang out with us for a bit. And again, like everybody has already said so far, just in the spirit of keeping things lively and casual, please throw your comments in questions and comments in the chat box. We'll be responding, and hope you guys enjoy your evening. And I'm hoping it's going to be a really interesting and in-depth conversation about some really important topics in birding today. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Edward. So I think we're ready to kick it off. Again, if you have questions at any time, I would say, enter it into the chat. But we will do Q&A at the very end of our 3 programs. So our first program is going to be Frances Kane and Bridget Kiernan, who are co-founders of the Feminist Bird Club Chicago chapter. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Hi everyone, I'm Frances.
Hello everyone, I am Bridget.
And I am pulling up the presentation as we speak. Sorry about my dog. All right, so Bridget,
well, first of all, thank you all so much for having us. Frances and I are so excited to be discussing this with you all this evening. But again, my name is Bridget Kiernan.
And I'm Frances Kane, and we both use she, her pronouns.
And we are the Chicago coordinators of the Feminist Bird Club chapter here in Chicago. And we started our chapter in May of 2018, so we are coming up on our 2-year anniversary as a chapter already. So in this presentation, we just want to tell you all who may not be familiar with Feminist Bird Club a little bit about the club and what we have done as a club here in Chicago. So first and foremost, who are we? Feminist Bird Club was founded by Molly Adams. Hey, Molly, she's here. In 2016 with the mission to be an inclusive birdwatching club that provides a safe opportunity to connect with the natural world while fundraising to protect the rights of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, as well as all members of the LGBTQIA community and women. And Chicago was the 3rd chapter of Feminist Bird Club, followed by New York City, the founding chapter, and Boston.
And today we have 8 chapters across the US and 2 international chapters. The US chapters being Seattle, San Francisco, Madison, Chicago, Michigan, Buffalo, New York, and Boston, New York City. And the 2 international chapters are in Toronto and across the pond in the Netherlands. We also have in green the 2 sister chapters, which are in Mexico and Argentina. So why we decided to reach out to Molly to start a Chicago chapter was because we were inspired by the work of the Feminist Bird Club on the East Coast in New York City and Boston, and we wanted to foster a similar community in Chicago. Another main reason was just because we really identify with the club's mission and we wanted to uplift that message in not only the Chicago community, but in the Chicago bird community.
It's also important to note that Frances and I did discover Feminist Bird Club through Instagram. So we've really seen how this club has grown and taken effect through social media. If it weren't for social media, rather Instagram, we wouldn't have been aware of the work started by Molly in New York City. And over the years, we've seen Feminist Bird Club grow due to the power of social media attracting the involvement of young people. And while we do cater to all ages on the spectrum, we've seen a lot of involvement in younger folks, which has been inspiring to see how many people turn up and engage with us. And we hope that those involved with Feminist Bird Club will also grow to work and engage with pioneering organizations like Audubon and other ornithological societies.
So here are a few photos, sorry about the sun, I'm gonna move eventually, from our walks in the past 2 years. They're always such a fun time, and I feel like there's been such a great community of birders that have come out in Chicago for our walks. Something that I want to point out and that I'll elaborate on a little bit more later is that all of our walks are led collaboratively, which I think is a little bit unique because Bridget and I aren't necessarily experts. We do want to act more as facilitators versus leaders. We're open to formal leadership, but we want everybody to be able to have the opportunity to identify a bird, whether it's a rare bird or a really common bird, because we want to cater to all skill levels.
We also make sure that we host our bird walks all over Chicago. We tend to stick within city limits, but sometimes we will go to the outskirts of the city, like the Calumet region, and we've even ventured to Indiana on occasion. But some of the different locations we've hosted our bird walks include Montrose Point Bird Sanctuary, Douglas Park, Jackson Park, Graceland Cemetery, Rose Hill Cemetery, Big Marsh, the Baugh Woods, Humboldt Park, South Shore Nature Sanctuary, North Pond, Northerly Island, North Park Village Nature Center. And we've also done some field trip style walks where we organized a carpool and went out to Jasper Pulaski Wildlife Refuge in Indiana in the fall a couple of years ago to see the sandhill crane migration staging point, which for those of you who haven't been is really an amazing opportunity. Highly recommend it. There are thousands of sandhill cranes there by the late fall. So we've done that in the past. Also, fundraising is a really important aspect of our mission. for those of you that are familiar with the club, maybe you've purchased a patch in the past, but every year Feminist Bird Club designs a patch with a specific species, which is chosen deliberately. So over the past 5 years that these patches have been available for purchase, they have raised over $13,000 for different charities. So in 2016, the patch featured the painted bunting, and those proceeds went to Planned Parenthood. In 2017, the patch featured the black skimmer, benefiting the New York Abortion Access Fund and the Women's Initiative. And in 2018, the patch featured the spotted sandpiper, and those proceeds went to support Black Lives Matter. And in 2019, the patch featured a female snowy owl, and those proceeds went to benefit Pueblo Sin Fronteras and Native Youth Sexual Health Network. And a question for the chat. Some of you may have seen glimpses of the patch already, but does anyone know the species that is featured on our 2020 patch? Good job, Greta.
All right. We also have done some fundraising as a chapter. So in the past 2 years, we've raised roughly $2,000 towards various organizations, both local and national. Most of our fundraising techniques are based on birdathons, which is taking after the New York chapter, where we ask folks to pledge an amount to donate for a species we see on a walk, or on a big day. And we've also held events where we have a suggested $5 to $10 donation per attendee, with our most recent event in that style being our Bird Bingo Night at Middlebrow, which was a big hit. And we hope to do more stuff like that in the future. We have raised money for the Chicago Women's Health Center, the National Network of Abortion Funds, Trans Lifeline, and Deborah's Place.
And so this year's patch, dun da da da, some of you guessed correctly, but this is our 2020 patch featuring the magnificent pileated woodpecker, which was illustrated by Bird Collective's Angie Coe. And we did select this species because its range extends to nearly every current chapter of the Feminist Bird Club. And it also represents the powerful force that we hope to bring into this year, including the 2020 election. And the proceeds of this patch are split between 2 organizations this year, the first being the Transgender, Gender Variant, and Intersex Justice Project. And their mission is to challenge and end the human rights abuses committed against transgender, gender variant, genderqueer, and intersex people in California prisons and beyond. And the other charity is Make the Road New York. And their mission is to build the power of Latinx and working class communities of color to achieve dignity and justice through organizing, policy innovation, transformative education, and the provision of survival services. And Edward did share the link, but for those of you that may have missed it, you can purchase our Feminist Bird Club 2020 patches through Bird Collective's website. It will take about 2 or 3 weeks to receive your order, but you can do it through there. And at some point later this year, Francis and I will have a limited quantity of our patches available at our walks. And they are $10 each.
So going more into the more political side of this club, what sets Feminist Bird Club apart? The number one thing is intersectionality. So we start all of our walks with a land acknowledgement for the Indigenous groups who were here first. When we do a land acknowledgement, we honor the land's original caretakers, which in the case of Chicago includes the Three Fires Confederacy, which is the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. But we urge you to investigate who was on your land first as well, and Edward will link a really great interactive map to do so. Another thing that we do is we introduce ourselves using our pronouns, and we hope that by doing that, we can create a space where others feel safe doing the same. And in doing that, we want to make sure that folks know that we acknowledge identities outside of the binary. So if that is how you identify. We want you to be able to exist as your truest self on our walks. And that's a really important thing in feminism and in our club.
Additionally, safety and accessibility are priorities of ours when planning an event. So when we do host a bird walk, we prioritize fostering an inclusive and communal setting to experience urban nature with others. We host the majority of our events at locations that are accessible by public transit to ensure all of our members are able to travel safely to the location. If we choose to host an event outside of the limits of public transit, we organize a carpool. Additionally, we seek to create safety in numbers, acknowledging that marginalized folks may feel unsafe in a secluded green space alone. Also, it's really important to us to acknowledge the history and current politics surrounding the green space or birding location that we're occupying. And by doing this, we seek to honor the network of mutuality within our Chicago neighborhoods and the protection of spaces for human and non-human residents alike. In parks whose surrounding neighborhoods are facing gentrification, Humboldt Park being a good example of that, it's important for us to draw attention to the intersections of urban birding and local politics. While it's important for us to reflect on these intersections on our walks, we also urge folks to take action by being active members of their community, whether it's calling their local alderman about rent control or voting for candidates that uphold aspects of our club's mission. And we do this by providing voting resources for every local and general election. And another example to bring up is when hosting walks at Douglas Park. In the past, we draw attention to the importance of naming and place and the movement to rename Douglas Park by adding an additional S on Douglas. And this renaming would honor Frederick Douglass, a prominent leader in the abolitionist movement in the United States, rather than Stephen Douglas, which Douglas Park's naming currently reflects.
Talking a little bit more about what sets the Feminist Bird Club apart, a question that we try to ask ourselves when we're leading events or sending out emails is how to overcome systems of oppression and hierarchy when we come from a place of privilege. And we are not perfect, we have a lot to learn, but the main thing that we think is really important as a club is to provide financial support through fundraising. So we think that that's a really great tangible way, and I'm sure, I mean, this was Molly's intent with the club, but it's a really great way to tangibly support organizations doing really important work, as well as just supporting marginalized folks in general. We also like to, as I was saying earlier, emphasize community versus expertise. We kind of want to eliminate that knowledge hierarchy. We want everybody to come in with any skill level and to be able to enjoy the walk and feel like they have autonomy over identifications and not try to say everything before everybody gets the chance to spot it themselves. Another aspect of that is if we see a species, we want to make sure that everybody on the walk has the opportunity to see it before moving along. And I find that's a really great way for folks to learn birds who maybe are new to birding as well. The last thing that we do is promoting involvement in local politics. Bridget, again, was talking about this a little bit before, but we like to provide resources and links and share information about local politics and movements in support of marginalized groups in Chicago and beyond. That can look like voting resources, that can be a call to contacting your local alderman or a representative about issues like rent control, just things that keep our members engaged with what's going on in Chicago, and really ultimately urging our members to take care of others in their community and others in the birding community. So that's all for our presentation. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or concerns, you can email us at feministbirdclub.chicago@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll send it along to Bridget for one last trivia question in the comments.
Yeah. I also just want to say thank you so much to COS and Audubon and Peggy Notebart and everyone who tuned in for inviting us to participate in this discussion this evening. We hope to see you all at a bird walk sometime in the future when it is safe to do so. And we've also included a brief guide on physical distancing, which suggests to keep 1 turkey vulture of space between you and others. They have a wingspan of about 6 feet. So if anyone could think of a alternative species that would also meet the CDC's requirements on social distancing, please drop that in the box below. And thanks again. We hope everyone takes care.
Thank you, Francis and Bridget. That was awesome. I can speak as someone who's been on a couple of Feminist Bird Club walks, and they're a lot of fun and a little bit different than other bird walks I've been in, and I just really like their thoughtful and welcoming approach. It's just such a nice environment. And so with that, I want you to know if you have any questions for Francis and Bridget, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the presentations. But for now, we're going to move on to our next presentation on birdability. And so I want to introduce Virginia Rose from Austin, who's from Austin, Texas, and the founder of Birdability, and as well as Elizabeth Todd, who will also be speaking, and she is a Danger Mound Fellow with National Audubon Society. So, welcome.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Chicago Ornithological Society, for having me. I sure appreciate being a part of this wonderful presentation. Thank you. Slide 2. My mission is to show people with mobility challenges the benefits of birding, the possibilities, the learning, the successes, the beauty, and a greater sense of freedom, community, and joy. Today, participants will learn about birdability and the importance of birding for people with mobility challenges. Next. Let me begin by explaining the role that birding played in my life. I was 14 years old when I was paralyzed in a horseback riding accident 47 years ago, and I've used a wheelchair ever since. Slide 3. I began birding 17 years ago with Travis Audubon Society in Austin, Texas. I was 43 years old. I enrolled in all the birding classes and participated in every field trip I could in the middle of a full-time teaching career. We have fond memories of me in the back seat grading papers furiously between birding stops. Slide 4. One day I wandered off on my own, enveloped myself in a swath of forest, and sat alone, listening and watching. Shortly, I was overcome with a fierce gratitude for the forest, the birds, the learning, my ability to see and hear, and the opportunity to be alone in nature. And I realized right then that birding had changed me. I was stronger physically and emotionally. I was more independent than ever. I was more confident than ever, proud of myself and looking at a forever hobby with infinite learning opportunities. Next. And there was another thing. Birding had made me braver. In my zest to explore new places and see new birds, and in my determination to keep up with all my walking cohorts, I had to commit to trips not knowing if I could even do them, not knowing if I could manage the trails, manage the hotel space, manage getting in and out of all those vehicles. But I learned that I would figure it out. more often than not on the fly and on a wing and a prayer. Next. The result, success, again and again. Empowerment with a capital E. Next. Additionally, and as important, I was part of a healthy, close-knit, like-minded community that embraced me on every level. I was leading beginning bird walks for 7 years, and now I'm on the board of directors. Next. Birding brought me the greatest happiness of my life. And I knew I needed to help others with mobility challenges get it. Let me show you all the benefits. Next. Birding provides people with mobility challenges access to physical strength, emotional fulfillment, independence, confidence, community, purpose, freedom. Next. My ultimate birdability dream is to create mobility challenged birding teams in every city in the nation. For instance, Seattle will come to Austin. The Seattle team I will show the Seattle team all of the places to bird here in Austin, and then Seattle can reciprocate. And this team of Austin birders can converge on Seattle and find all the places that they have found to bird together. Imagine the networking. Imagine the community. Can you see why birding can be so integral for everybody with mobility challenges? I said everybody, because people who don't have mobility challenges yet may be looking at them in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. Let's not think of the mobility challenged as an other group. Next. I created a 5-pronged approach. First, find folks with mobility challenges and Audubon chapters nationwide. Second, find accessible birding sites nationwide. Third, find people with mobility challenges through various support groups nationwide. For instance, spinal cord injured groups in every city across the nation, amputee support groups in every city throughout the nation, adaptive sports groups in every city, and Easter seals. I approached every one of those groups in Austin and have pulled my mobility team together through those support groups. Number 4, find the most accessible birding festivals and schedule accessible walks. I want to give a big shout out to Mary Gustafson at this point with the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, who had the foresight 3 years ago to add accessible walks to her festival. 2 years ago, I was invited to lead those walks as a leader in training. Last year, I led those walks on my own. And I am excited to announce that Tucson Audubon approached me 6 months ago to do the same thing. So their festival in August is going to include accessible walks for the first time ever, and I'm leading them. Number 5, find handicap camps for kids nationwide to include birdability programming. It's a perfect fit. The campuses are already accessible, and we're reaching the most important audience, kids. So we'll take those 5 ideas and we'll put them all together. And then in Milwaukee, 2019, Liz materializes before my very eyes. Liz?
Hi everyone, my name is Liz Todd. I'm a Danger Mon Fellow with the National Audubon Society. As Virginia mentioned, I met her in Milwaukee at the Audubon convention in July of 2019. Virginia presented at an equity, diversity, and inclusion deep dive that I was lucky enough to attend with my whole team. And as she spoke, I was struck by the fact that a lot of the burden of research to find out if a birding site was accessible, to find out if a birding tour was accessible, often fell to her. And it was something that was time consuming, that was onerous, and sometimes even when she got to those sites, her lived experience didn't necessarily align with the information that she had found. And I was lucky enough to have an incredible boss who we looked across each other at the table and we thought, I think we can use GIS to maybe address part of this problem. So for the last 9 months, I've been working to develop an Audubon program that's been inspired by Virginia and Birdability. And so that's the site that you're viewing right now. So Birdability, this Birdability website, and it's gis.audubon.org/birdability, is the National Audubon Society's first attempt at trying to catalog accessibility information about outdoor spaces. And so if you go to this website and you scroll down, you can help us document these sites. So if you look at the map that's now displaying before you, you can see a bunch of points that are popping up across the United States. Funnily enough, there's also a point in Ecuador, which I'm really happy to have. And there's a point in Hawaii as well. So these points are interactive, and we've been lucky enough to have a bunch of people submit. So as you go and you move around the map, you can click on a point, and it will give you a pop-up and tell you all about the birdability information of that particular location. So it will tell you about estimated distance of the trail. It will tell you about the parking area, the parking, any additional notes. It will tell you about the ramp slope, the trail surface. It will tell you if there are gates or not, if there's railings, and if they obstruct the viewing of someone who may be in a wheelchair. It will also tell you if there are viewing blinds, and if there are viewing blinds, what those blinds may look like, and if they're accessible. It will touch on benches and bathrooms and any additional information you might need. And I just want to stress that this is not supposed to be a catalog of the best and the brightest, most accessible birding trails. This is simply our attempt to catalog information about outdoor locations. So the good, the bad, the ugly, everything between, that's what we're trying to catch here. That way folks, when they go to a site, they know exactly what they're looking for, what they're getting themselves into. And really hoping to empower people to get outside and see that there are these areas near them where they can bird. And so with that, this whole platform is powered by you. Birdability, this Birdability GIS platform is crowdsourced, and it really depends on the submissions from passionate and engaged birders. So if you scroll down, you have this opportunity to submit your own birdability review. So if you want to submit a birdability review, you click this button and it loads a survey. And the survey allows you to enter information about your trail and pick more information about all of the different categories that I mentioned earlier. And my favorite part of this, and I'm not actually going to submit a point now, but my favorite part of this is that it's actually almost instantly interactive. So once you submit your own point, you can just go back to this main website and refresh the page, and your point will pop up right before your eyes. So not only will you be able to contribute to it, but you'll be able to see your contribution right on this map. So we do want to acknowledge, though, that we understand that mobility differences is just a small part or a small section of the differently abled community. And so we're hoping this will be a launching off point for potentially more National Audubon Society projects in the future that look at different types of disabilities and disability challenges and figure out how to make birding more accessible to them. Finally, I just want to make a huge thank you to Virginia. She's been absolutely incredible to work with. She's been a huge inspiration for me, and she's helped my daily work so incredibly rewarding. I absolutely love this program, and I'm really excited to see where it can go. I hope all of you will consider submitting a poll.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you, Virginia and Elizabeth. That was amazing. I think we're all inspired to help out and map or add our own birding locations to the map. I think it's, when I was thinking about this presentation, I was like, well, that's something that we can still do while sheltering in place or social distancing, because I can just walk to my neighborhood park and add it to the map. So I hope that gives you an idea of something that you can do, even, you know, in the time when we're kind of limited in how we can go out and bird. So again, I see some questions coming in the chat, so I just want you to know we'll get to those right after our last presentation. So next we are going to have Jenn Johnson, who is a wild indigo coordinator in Gary, Indiana, with Audubon Great Lakes. And she's going to be talking about a birding or indoor birding program that she started as part of her position with Audubon. So take it away, Jenn.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So again, hello, everyone. This presentation is about busting birding barriers. And I'm a wild indigo coordinator for the city of Gary, Indiana. Just a little bit about the program. It's a multi-generational program under Audubon Great Lakes, and it serves to, it's made to connect underserved communities with their natural local spaces. So that would include people of color, people with disabilities, the elderly, etc. And currently the program operates in Illinois in Cook County, Northwest Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, and now Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So one thing that the program has always strived to do is bust some of those barriers that keep people from birding or getting into enjoying more of their time outdoors or connecting more with nature. And so what I'm going to do throughout this presentation is walk us through a winter indoor birding program that I had put together last winter. And it was open to the public, and it was made so people could see that they can enjoy birding any time of the year. And the participants would have binoculars, and they'd learn how to use those. And I'd learn how to identify different characteristics of birds. One barrier that we have found people would struggle with is where would they go birding? And so in the city of Gary, the best place for this program was at the Paul Douglas Center and at Miller Woods. It was central to many of the people in the town. And also it provided a space with a large viewing window, and it also had access to trails to Miller Woods. Because of the time that we're in now, the best place for you to start is at home. So I'm sure there are a lot of you who've been to a birding program before. Let's see, I would like to see the chat, but if you can say in the chat how many of you have been to a birding program. It doesn't have to be one with wild indigo, it could be any kind. If you've been to a birding program, just type 1 and type what time typically those birding programs start. If you haven't been to a birding program, you could type 2 and make a guess at what time you think those programs would start. And Stephanie or Kristen, you can tell me if there are more 1s or 2s.
Definitely more 1s. I haven't seen any 2s yet. Everyone's saying 7, 8 a.m. or 7.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So typically those birding programs are early, but we found that for people that are more working class or they have school, it might be too early for those participants. And so a lot of my programs, they're after 10 o'clock. And some people just aren't morning people. It's no matter the time of the day, they just would prefer to take a few extra snooze, but that's okay. Since we're at home now, you can start your birding journey at any time of the day, although the best time is in the morning. And what is a good way to help you wake up? You could type tea or coffee in the chat. And again, Stephanie, if you could let me know what some of people's favorite drinks are in the morning. I like a cup of green tea in the morning, help me get started.
Most people are saying coffee. There's a few tea votes.
Yeah. So as you're getting ready for your time out to go birding at your porch or your backyard, have a cup of tea and keep it short. There's no reason that you have to spend all day birding unless you want to, that's just fine. But your birding session can be as long as that cup of coffee or tea. Another thing that we at Wild Indigo had figured out is that some people don't have access to materials. So a lot of the time we would bring binoculars, we would provide pictures of birds. The wonderful rangers at the Douglas Center would have feeders filled with high quality seed or suet. And you can also use your cell phone and a field guide and pen and paper. But I think the thing that you need the most is just yourself. So you can use your sense of sight and sound. A lot of these things are optional. And if you're just observing from your porch or you're observing from a window, the only thing you really need is yourself. But I will be referencing some of these materials as we continue throughout the presentation. So during that program, I emphasized with the participants what characteristics of birds are they seeing. And we're gonna go through some of this list to guess what kind of bird this is on the right. So one of the things I was asked is, what size is the bird? Is it sparrow-sized? Is it crow-sized? Is it larger? And I'd also look at the body shape. I'd also ask the participants, what color is the bird that they're seeing? Is it brown, red? And on what parts? Does the bird have an eye patch? Is it a patch of orange or red on the wing? And I'd also ask the participants to look at other parts of the bird, like the beak shape. Is it hooked or needle-like? And this is also a wonderful opportunity to listen. What sounds do you hear? Is the bird kind of squeaking noise? Are the notes from the calls kind of slow or fast? And the best part I love to do is just to watch how the birds move. This bird on the side, what does it look like it's doing? Is it flitting from branch to branch, or does it look like it could be soaring? And if you can, take a guess at what bird that you see on the side and what silhouette. Take a guess at the bird silhouette. And if you can, Stephanie, but could you read to me the in the chat what some people's guesses are?
One guess is common raven. Crow,
Raven?
turkey
Mhm.
vulture, eagle, turkey vulture, bald eagle, hawk.
Hawk. Oh,
Hawk was
okay.
my
So
guess.
yeah, so there's some really good guesses, and those that guessed hawk, we got a beautiful red-tailed hawk, and you might see them at your feeder if you have one, or just soaring over your home. I actually saw one yesterday when I was in my backyard. And after you've gone through that list of descriptors and you're like, well, I still don't know what bird this is. And there's no coordinator, there's no one from Audubon or any other wonderful birding groups to help me. That is still okay. You can use those descriptors and find the bird with the app, like the Audubon app, or others from Cornell, or you can use a field guide. And you can use those descriptors to help you figure out what kind of bird that you saw. And once you've figured out, well, what bird it is, you would make a list and you would count how many you saw during your sighting. And it's a wonderful opportunity to change sites. You could go from your porch, maybe you can make a list for your alley or your side window and compare and record your findings on eBird, and other birders in your area will be able to see what you found. So the takeaway is that program that I did at the Douglas Center is easily transferable to do at home. It takes minimal time and resources. If you would like binoculars, or if you have them, I encourage you to use them. If you don't, that's all right. You could just use your two main senses, your sight and your hearing. And it's a low entry point for new birders. If you're on this webinar and you're like, I've never birded before, just being able to describe the bird that you saw or heard is a great way to talk about birds with other people that are birders, or even just to figure out what it was. And this method allows you to go at your own pace. Sometimes it feels like birding traditionally is a little intimidating, and it might feel like you need to know every bird that you saw. If you saw a sparrow and you're not quite sure if that's a chipping sparrow or a house sparrow, that's okay. It takes time to learn those kind of differences. So I want to say thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And also check out our Wild Indigo Facebook page. When it is time for us to have public events once more, you can find the event there for your city. And also, we will be posting different activities that you can do at home. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
And
Jen.
thank you, Steph, for helping me with the chat.
Oh yeah, that was fun. All right. So speaking of the chat, we're opening it up for questions for all of our presenters today. So if you have any questions for any of them, make sure to enter in the chat. I'm seeing one now that just came in at the end of Jen's presentation. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with that one. But if our moderators could also look out for other questions, let me know. So Ray Tamblin asked, what role does the public library play to making birding accessible to new birders? Do you recommend hitting up the local library to find field guides versus buying if cost is a concern?
I can answer that. I actually used to go to school to be a librarian, so that's right up my alley. Yes, I would totally encourage you to go to the library, use those resources if you are unable to. If you have internet at home, you could go to the Audubon website. There's different descriptions and profiles of birds, or even Cornell's website. Those are wonderful resources that are reputable, that are easy to look up, if you're just starting out birding, and you can print out any of those profiles that you have found ahead of time as well.
Thanks. It looks like another question for Jenn. Marilyn asks, are there any other barriers for POCs? It's hard to find true integration when I'm on bird walks.
I imagine so. I mean, from my own experience, I feel like the program has been able to alleviate a lot of those socioeconomic barriers. Like if you don't have binoculars, we provide them. We also remove any of if you can't physically get to a place where we're having an event, we're able to provide a bus for free. Other areas, as far as when you're actually birding with other people, we did it, Wesley. That's my brother. He has autism. There we go. Downstairs. Thank you. So one thing that has helped is just to continue showing up as much as you can and find other groups that cater to people of color that go outdoors. There are plenty on Facebook. And also, I would just say to, over time, you'll find your tribe, I suppose. I would say you'll find people that you'll vibe with that do birding.
Thanks, Jenn. So a question from Suzanne about birdability. Suzanne asks, do you know if there's anything like this in Canada? We'd like to contribute and add locations in our area.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, actually, I was contacted by Andres Jimenez Mong with Birds Canada in Toronto just about 2 weeks ago. And so he is on it. So that's, he and I are just keeping in contact, but he's definitely interested. So Toronto is on its way.
I will also say, Suzanne, that birdability is not just limited to the United States. I mentioned we have a point in Ecuador. It's only one point, but we also have a point in Canada as well. You can submit it to any geographic location. So as long as you have the information and you want to submit points, you can go ahead and feel free to submit points for anywhere in the world. And the map can be you can click on the map and pull and kind of toggle the map and move it to different parts of the world. Right now it's focused to North America and the United States in particular, because that's where we have the majority of our submissions. But how we display that data can change if we get enough submissions globally. So please, I really encourage you to just submit any and as many points as you want to for Canada. Full steam ahead.
Okay, another question about birdability from Ray Tamlin. They want to know if this is if there's an ability to fill out the information that you showed on the map via an app.
So we do not have an app for Birdability, but that does not mean you cannot fill it out from a phone. This is configured for mobile devices, so you can just go to gis.audubon.org/Birdability and go to the website and click on the survey, and you'll be able to access the full web page and also the survey submission from your phone. We understand that that's a bit clunkier than an app, and it's something we've considered moving into, so that might be in the future. But for now, you can just submit from an internet browser on your mobile device or on an iPad as well. This is phone, tablet, and desktop browser friendly.
Question coming in the chat from Vanessa. I suppose this could be for multiple people on the panel. Question is, how do you support new birders, especially youth?
I can go. One thing that we try to do is just make sure that the youth are as engaged as possible and keep it light and fun. So if they, if they're singing during the bird hike, it's okay if they sing. And also to help them to give me the answers. I try not to say, well, that's a sparrow over there, that's a house sparrow. I want them to describe to me, oh, this bird has a black patch on its throat. It's kind of a large sparrow. It's got kind of a short, blunt beak, things like that. And also to make sure that they're comfortable, because some of the kids that we've dealt with, they might come from homes that they didn't provide them breakfast that day, but we have snacks for them. We have water and things for them to drink so they can stay comfortable throughout the day. So those are just small things that help keep the youth engaged and help them feel like they're a part of the process.
Those are good tips. I remember hearing some of those. I haven't done much walks with kids, and I'm always default to saying what things are, but that's a good point of letting them make the observations for themselves. So Kristen asked a question for the Feminist Bird Club. How do you decide which organizations to support for your fundraising efforts?
So it really depends. Some of them have been timely. So when we donated to the National Network of Abortion Funds, it was, it's still going on, but it was at the time when everything was in the news was about the abortion rights under attack, and the right to choose. So that was one example of it. We chose Deborah's Place because it supports houseless women in Chicago, and that was kind of at the turn of the winter and like the dead of winter, which for folks in the Midwest, they know it can be rough. So we thought that supporting them would help them get more supplies for people who need them to stay warm.
Oh, that's a great question from Edward. So on the same topic from earlier about supporting young birders, he wants to know, how do you support new and young birders when right now we can't meet in person?
If you're connected via social media, that's probably the best way right now. One of my colleagues actually hosted a bird poetry contest on Instagram, and he had a fantastic response from the people in his area. He's in Detroit, Michigan. And so he was able to use that simple action, send us a poem about a bird. And that was a great way for him to still stay engaged with him. And the engagement doesn't have to be birding per se. It could be, you could draw a bird, you can write about a bird, you could take a picture of a robin in your yard. So there are different ways to engage with the youth. And you can use those interests that they already have and link it up with birds and birding, even if you're remote.
I also want to say that a few Audubon chapters and centers and state offices are now doing virtual birding tours or have some coming up. So keep on the lookout for potential virtual opportunities to bird with people through that.
Yeah, I also posted a link to Audubon's Audubon for Kids new website that went up recently, and that's full of activities to keep your kids busy at home. And they do updates, I think, every week. So definitely check that out if you have kids at home, or if you know someone that has kids. So question from Dan for Liz. Dan wants to know, is there a list of terms or characteristics on the Birdability site that would be helpful to include about physical accessibility? I clicked on my nearest pin, Lake Merritt in Oakland, and someone indicated that the trail slopes follow the 1:20 ratio. I don't know what that is, but would love to be able to include as much useful mobility info as possible when doing this.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dan. That's actually a really, really good point. The 1:20 ratio, as I understand it, is the best slope for someone who may be in a wheelchair. So it just means that for every inch the trail raises or lowers, it kind of does that over the course of 20 inches of like horizontal distance as well. And that can be kind of hard to understand because you can't necessarily always measure it out. So that's definitely something we're relying on folks to eyeball. So a lot of times with those submissions, it does come down to people's best judgment. Other than that, most of the questions have an other option. So while you can click a default like pre-baked answer, you also have the option to type in and elaborate on everything that you're seeing. So you'll have multiple choices and chances throughout the actual survey submission process to add in additional detail that doesn't necessarily come in from our options that we tried to have the foresight to see ahead and predict. So really just include everything and anything. It all helps. Virginia, do you have anything that you want to add to that answer?
Yes, I would simply add that when it comes to gauging those slopes, 1:12 or 1:20, it really is going to require, I think, a person in a wheelchair to help you determine if that's a doable slope or a doable grade. Unfortunately, not everyone has like a best buddy who has a mobility challenge, but my advice to everybody is see if you can get in good with your spinal cord injured group and present your situation to your local spinal cord injury group. And I can guarantee you that 1 or 2 or 3 of them will jump on the chance to go to a park and help you determine whether or not it's an accessible place or not.
Another question in the chat from Andrea for Francis and Bridget. Andrea wants to know, any idea if there are any FBC people or a group in Southern California?
I can answer this, Francis. We do have a chapter in the Bay Area, so more so San Francisco, but if you would like to email us, we might be able to connect you with the San Francisco chapter, and they might know of some people in Southern California that are involved with Feminist Bird Club. So we'll post our email and we can try to connect you.
Yeah, if there's not a chapter yet, maybe you can start one. Cool. So another question for Liz. Aren't these sites accessible by a query of counties' parks using ADA info already established? Thank you for your efforts. A lot of the footwork should be done.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So a lot of county park systems do have ADA information accessible on websites. However, we're really trying to encourage people to not just document parks. This is meant for everything from a trail to a sanctuary to a center to the little green space around the corner from your apartment in the city. If it's green, actually it doesn't even have to be green. If there's birds, we want to know about it. If it's a place in a space where people can get outside, we want to know about it. And I would say the second kind of facet to my answer is that what makes this project different is that it's GIS based and that it's interactive. So this allows people to go to their area that they're in or an area they may want to bird in and actually click and interact with the map and see the information for themselves. So it's really supposed to A, provide a more complete catalog of this information, and then B, provide a more integrated and interactive user experience as well, which you may not get from one county park's website.
And can I speak to that? Because part of what I love about the GIS map is that my ideal as a person in a wheelchair is that if I decide to travel to Austin, Texas, and I've never been there, the first thing I want to do is to be able to open a map and open a map of Austin, Texas, and see the parks that are accessible, all lined up there for me. If I'm new to Austin, Texas, how am I going to know what county parks there even are? How will I even begin to identify all the accessible places if I have to figure out what the parks are first and then go to each park one at a time to decipher or determine whether or not it's accessible?
That's another good point. Thank you, Virginia.
And I saw that Nat wants to know what the most accessible birding areas are in Greater Chicago. I don't know. I don't expect you to know that, Liz, necessarily. I know I saw a couple of pins in the Chicago area, but if anyone else knows, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, if you don't know, I think that's a homework assignment for all of us.
Yes.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I challenge you all to find out and then submit.
So the other things happening in the chat right now, a lot of people are linking to bird cams, and so that's a really fun activity for kids too, and well, for anyone of all ages. But if you're stuck inside and you're not seeing a lot of birds in your yard, then definitely check out some of these awesome webcams that are rolling. We got some osprey cams, peregrine cams, birds on nests, birds at feeders. So cool. And what we have a call for more accessibility at Montrose. Master plan calls for barrier-free access to the magic hedge. Sounds good to me. All right, well, I think we're kind of winding down with the questions. So again, I want to thank all of our speakers today. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I think our audience did too, and it was great to see everyone really engaged in the chat. So thank you, and thank you everybody for joining us. This was really fun, and I hope you all can join us for another event in the future. So yeah, thanks everybody. And make sure to check out the more information online that we linked for Feminist Bird Club and Birdability, and hope to see you out on the trails someday. Bye everyone. Thanks for coming.